potatoes, Hal. Do you know what time it is?
Yes, of course I do, Mark. It's block party time. Beep, 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 beep.
Yes, it is, Hal. It is Maximum Fun's block party this week and next week. We're trying to get the entire world. We have our people of the world, but we want the entire rest of the world to know about We Got This with Mark and Hal and to know about all the great shows that we have out on the Maximum Fun network. We just appeared on a block party episode of Judge John Hodgman. And we have our own block party episode, which is, of course, the famous Mashed Potatoes episode, currently streaming now on Maximum Fun's block party YouTube page.
That's right.
You did it.
I know.
The game was we're not going to say that's right.
Wait,
that's why it was so difficult.
I'm going to pick it up.
No. Keep this in, Ken. He did
never.
it. He couldn't go one promo without saying, that's right.
Whatever. You have a projector that's sleeping on your couch like a brother-in-law.
For those who can't see this video, that makes no sense. There's just a projector sitting on my couch.
I can see it. Sometimes it's just for me. Get in on all the block party fun and discover some other great shows on the Max Fun Network that maybe you aren't listening to yet over at MaximumFun.org/block party. That is where all the info is on all the wonderful things happening during block party. But for now, please enjoy this episode of We Got This with Mark and Hal.
You are correct, sir.
That's right. Hello, I'm Hal Lublin.
And I'm Mark Gagliardi.
Since the dawn of humanity, one issue has gone unsettled. With the fate of the world in the balance, we're here to settle, once and for all, best Spielberg movie.
That's right. Don't worry, everyone. We got this.
Podcast should have a theme song. Podcast should not have a theme song. Yes, they should. No, they shouldn't. They sound good. Yeah, but people are just going to skip past it. You know what? You're right. We got this.
Best Spielberg movie. Best Steven Spielberg movie. Best Steven Spielberg movie. Best Spielberg movie. Best Spielberg movie.
Oh, God, we lost him. What is that from? What do I know that from?
I don't know. It's in a lot of stuff, I think. Yeah, it's a version of that.
Hal, you said best Spielberg movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's Steven Spielberg, right? You didn't say his first name.
It's Martin Spielberg.
Shoot, I am so underprepared for this episode.
Well, he's directed a lot of movies, so you
really
catch up. I'll wait while you watch all of the works of Martin.
Watch
Spielberg.
all of him. Oh, you know what? He doesn't have that many. You know what? It looks mostly like just videos of his family vacations.
Yeah.
On YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, check the Grand Tetons. It's really, really good.
Are you allowed to put that on YouTube?
I mean, it got pulled down, but then he just pixelated it and put it back up.
No, we're talking about Steven Spielberg, Hal. First of all, hi, it's nice to see you.
It's nice to see you too.
Yeah. It always makes me happy. It's a pleasurable Sunday afternoon. Football season is in full swing. So Hal might be distracted and periodically looking at another screen.
I refuse to look at another screen. That's it. It is what it is.
Well, Steven Spielberg wants you to look at only one screen, and that's the big screen.
Mm-hmm.
He is one of those proponents of, see it in a theater, shoot it on 35 millimeter film, whenever he can. He is what I think of. Did you grow up with the same thing that I did because growing up in the 80s, it was like the synonym for Hollywood movie director was Spielberg.
Mm-hmm.
That was just what you used. That was like saying Q-tip or Kleenex. Spielberg was the shorthand for Hollywood movie directors.
Yes, he was the guy, hit after hit after hit.
Mm-hmm.
The guy has been directing films. I mean, he started with Firelight in 1964, but even if we don't count that, it's been 50 years of filmmaking.
Yeah.
That he's been active, making movies that are huge successes, taking risks, working outside of his comfort zone. Like, he's sort of, the thing of Spielberg is I think we all have a different idea of who he is. For some of us, he's Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, like that sort of mid 70s Spielberg, then to 80s to Indiana Jones. Then there are other people for whom it's his serious movies, starting with The Color Purple.
Yeah.
And movies like Schindler's List and Amistad and even Lincoln. Like it's very hard to pin him down. So he'll do that. He'll do Tintin, He's doing West Side Story right now.
He's done things in absolutely every genre. And is this his first musical, West Side Story?
Yes.
This has got to be the first musical. I mean, there's a couple of songs in Hook, which we'll get to because I'm certain it's a contender.
Oh, for sure. It might be the winner.
Don't make fun of Hook.
I love Hook.
I love Hook too. We both started laughing at just at the mere idea that would be the greatest Spielberg movie, though. Do you have, because here's how in my looking at this, basically what I came up with was I have a short list of movies that I think are real contenders. And then I have a slightly longer list of movies that I think are honorable mentions that could give a contender a run for its money. If some detail about it comes to the top where we have one of those, oh, wow, I never had thought of that moments. You know what I mean?
Yes. I've spent a lot of time thinking about his movies, especially over the last 24 hours. And my choice for what his best movie is has changed, changed with the wind, changed with every time I blinked. It's a new movie. I was just thinking right now while we were going through some of his titles, if you were to put together a Mount Rushmore, a sort of top 4, like even that is impossible to do because there are more than 4 great movies. He helped define genres. He made the first summer blockbuster. The summer blockbuster is because of Jaws.
So many of those things. Yeah, anytime there's a montage where they play they'll play a theme, one of John Williams' big themes, and then it'll be just clips from a million movies. Like they do them at the Oscars. They used to do it at the Great Movie Ride at Disney World, like these big epic movie montages. Half of the clips in those montages are Spielberg movies. And you could make a Mount Rushmore, not even with the movies themselves, just with iconic characters from his movies. You could put Indiana Jones and E.T. and Bruce the Shark, you know what I mean? And who else? I guess, Dustin Hoffman as Hook.
Yeah. Richard Dreyfuss in Always.
Just all Richard Dreyfuss. You could do all Richard Dreyfusses.
Yes.
Do Richard Dreyfuss in Close Encounters, Richard Dreyfuss in Always, Richard Dreyfuss in, Jaws. Did he do a fourth? Surely he was in Lincoln. Surely he had fake sideburns and was in Lincoln sweating.
I think he was. He was also, he played the son in Empire of the Sun.
Oh, nice.
It's uncredited, but you can tell it's him.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. What do you gravitate toward? You mentioned before that there's multiple different kinds of Spielberg fans. There's the fans of his real serious work. There's the 80s fans. There's the blockbusters only. There's the old school duel fans. Where do you fit in this world?
It is hard to be our age and not immediately think of Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
When you think of Steven Spielberg and those 3 movies, I don't count the 4th one personally in there. I mean, I know he made it, but that was long after I was already well on my way into adulthood.
Right.
When that came out. I was in my 30s then. So
it feels like the sequel to a trilogy.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like there's the Indiana Jones trilogy and then they did a sequel to that trilogy and it was Crystal Skull.
But it's so masterfully made. And the teams he puts together, so how it's shot, obviously the way it's edited is brilliant. It's really well written. So everything is there. That is a great Raiders of the Lost Ark, which we have established as the best of the Indiana Jones films, is a masterpiece. But so is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where he tells a different story and there's even more humor. Like he balances things really well. So that to me is sort of the prime Spielberg that I grew up with. So that's the one I have the deepest attachment to. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's the same for me. I grew up as a kid with a Super 8 movie camera, which was, old then. The technology was old even then, but I was obsessed with the sort of tactile nature of it. And I always loved that. So was Steven Spielberg. He made through that run. Once he had the wherewithal to do it, he had a run of, I'm just going to make all the things that entertained me as a kid. Encountering Aliens, a monster movie about a giant shark, this 1930s serial adventure stories. It's that childhood play of it all. What was his connection with Poltergeist? He produced it, but he didn't direct it. Is that the deal?
Yes, he was a producer on it, and then he may have directed some of it, not enough of it
for it to be considered one of his.
Yeah.
But even that got me thinking, reading a thing about him talking about or seeing an interview where he talked about as a kid being afraid of what was just outside the tree outside of his bedroom. or being afraid of the tree outside his bedroom. So he created this horror movie where that becomes a big part of it. You know, all these, he's living that lifestyle that I've always wanted to live, which is if you could call up childhood version of yourself and tell him what you were doing, he would think it was awesome.
Yeah.
So that's the era of Spielberg that I also equate with, like, quintessentially him to me.
One time I went to see a movie at the West Side, wherever it was. It was like one of those big movie theaters, Century City. It's a Century City AMC.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm waiting to validate my parking ticket to leave, the person either behind me or ahead of me is Ron Howard.
Mm.
And we're waiting. It's taking a while.
Did he have on a scrambled eggs hat?
He had a scrambled eggs hat on. And he turned and asked me, what did you see? Like, he just wanted to have a conversation about movies.
Yeah.
Because he loves movies. He loves the making of movies. And Spielberg is someone who I get that same energy from. There's nothing else he could be doing than making movies because he loves it so much. All the movies that came before him. He loves movies being made now. He loves the art of storytelling. And that really comes through in all of his work, whether he wrote the screenplay, which he did a few times or not. You can definitely tell when he's really involved in it because it has a lot to do with like absentee dad.
Yeah.
Like Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Exactly. Yeah.
He's an absentee dad or the dad's not there a lot of the time. So.
Yeah, it seemed like that run was just dealing with all of his childhood stuff too, like getting it on screen. There's something kind of cool about, you mentioned, that his job is storyteller. There's something kind of cool, I think, about him and George Lucas and Ron Howard and all of these guys back then, like that. Having never heard that story of Ron Howard just turning to you and going, "Oh, what'd you see?"
Yeah.
Which I kind of love.
And then asked what I thought of it. I said, I saw whatever movie. Oh, what did you think? He didn't have to care.
Yeah, but that he does. And that's a person who loves making movies.
Yeah.
And that is what, like, Spielberg hanging out with Lucas, working on Star Wars. You know what I mean? Just like these guys were all around one another at the time when they realized their job was just tell stories. And they would all have assorted smaller credits on each other's things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It feels like what came out of Mexico in the last few years.
Absolutely.
The Cuarón, Del Toro, and
the triplets.
Yeah, the trio, and Almodovar.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to Steven Spielberg. Here's my pitch.
Okay.
I think there's going to be some contenders that we both know are top contenders. Let's back and forth rattle off just some of the ones that we just want to make sure they get their due, and then we can start talking about some of the contenders.
Okay. Oh, I thought we were just going to rattle off contenders and say why we think they're a contender to try to generate a list. But all right, I have one.
Look, there's going to be 5 movies that we both agree are. Should we come up with the contenders first, like the top contenders, and then we'll rattle off our second
I
tier
kind of want to hear
favorites?
how many we think are contenders. You want to write these down? Will you track the list?
I will track this list.
You want me to start?
Sure.
Okay, I'll make it easy and start with Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Of course.
Not only does it introduce one of the most iconic characters in culture, but it is a brilliant callback to the serials of the 1930s and 40s, specifically Perils of Pauline is what he's going for there. It's him collaborating with Lucas as the idea guy, which is really like the perfect Lucas role, is him coming up with the concept, them working with Jeffrey Boehm to tell the story. It's just perfect throughout. It moves super fast, which is not something a lot of older movies do. I mean, this movie is now 40 years old.
Yeah.
And generally, the further back a movie goes, even if it was fast paced at the time, it still feels slow because pace quickens. Movies get faster and our attention spans get shorter. This one remains perfectly paced and not a dull moment. It's just a perfect movie top to bottom.
Great. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I will also add Jaws to the list. I mean, classic. It invented the summer blockbuster. If it weren't for Jaws, we wouldn't have Star Wars. I think that it set the tone, and it is a classic. It's a great director doing a classic monster movie.
Why do you think Jaws gave us Star Wars?
Because Jaws gave us blockbusters. Jaws gave us the concept of tentpole, expensive, market the hell out of it movies.
Oh, I have to push my glasses up and take a puff off my,
Oh, are you about to actually me?
I have to take my glasses off and push my, I have to push my glasses at the bridge of my nose and take a puff off of my inhaler. Because really the movie that allowed him to make Star Wars was American Graffiti, which was
no. I'm not talking
Star
about
Star Wars wasn't a giant budget movie,
right? But you're talking about George Lucas. I'm talking about Steven Spielberg,
right? But I'm saying Jaws isn't the reason why we had Star Wars.
That's part of it. It's why Star Wars was the phenomenon it was.
Disagree, sir.
All right. It's facts don't care about your opinion, Hal.
They don't care about feelings. Oh, dumb facts.
Now we're just, are we just, because we're doing this thing coming up where we have to have some sort of dispute between the two of us? Now we're just going to start trying to find disputes and things.
No, it's fine. We're good. When I was a teenager, I went to Israel with a teen tour.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the places that we visited when we were near Jerusalem was Yad Vashem, which is the Holocaust Museum. If you ever find yourself in Israel, it is a must visit. It is the best Holocaust museum. The one in DC is also fantastic. I mean, they're all great reminders and preservations of history. And while we were taking the tour, there is a grove of trees that are planted in remembrance of people lost during the Holocaust. And one of them was a tree dedicated to a man called Oskar Schindler, who I'd never heard of before. And in telling us the story, they said Steven Spielberg is making a movie about him right now. And that was 1993's Schindler's List.
Yeah.
Simply one of the greatest movies ever made. Very touching. I remember seeing it multiple times. There were a couple of movies that our entire school went to see. Like they just took us one grade at a time over to the local theater. We actually walked there from our campus to watch, and Schindler's List was one of them. And I didn't cry until I was an adult to really like feel the impact of it. But even though it is specific to a culture and his work with the Shoah Foundation, he's very much in the preservation of the history of the Holocaust. This movie is super, not only is it brilliantly made, but it is culturally and historically important.
Well, I think everybody that made it knew that too. So you've got, Yitzhak Perlman, I think, was playing the music that John Williams wrote. As Spielberg is directing, and it's in black and white. It was, Janusz, was it his normal guy, his regular
Janusz Kaminski
DP that did it? I would assume so.
I think,
but like everybody knew that they were making something more important than just a movie.
Yeah.
And it's a masterpiece.
Fun fact about that one. It was so emotional.
There are fun facts.
Fun fact. Hey, Schindler's List fun facts. Welcome to the Schindler's List fun corner.
We got to make a Chiron that pops up anytime you have a Schindler's List fun fact.
Not fun. No, this is an interesting fact about the making of that movie is that it was so emotionally taxing for Spielberg. You know, obviously he's dealing with intensely personal things that are really sad. You know, we all know the history of the Holocaust and he doesn't pull punches in his making of the movie. So Robin Williams would call him once a week and essentially just do bits over the phone to cheer him up.
Wow. Good on him. And that became Patch Adams.
Correct. They just took those recordings and everybody mouthed them while on camera.
No, what was the one I'm thinking of? Jacob the Liar. Was that it? That's the one that I was not Patch
Jacob
Adams.
the Liar.
Jacob the Liar is, it's the American attempt at Life is Beautiful. Wasn't that basically what that was?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of, yeah.
Anyway, of course, Schindler's List, masterpiece on there. I'm going to go ahead and add E.T. to our list of contenders.
Yeah.
Another one of those just great. First of all, it's got maybe the greatest. Now, well, we can't say because we've already definitively determined the greatest John Williams theme of all time, but this is definitely up there and we talked about it a lot. Please go back and listen to that episode with Jonathan Dinerstein, the music in E.T., the E.T. flying theme, and just everything that happens in that movie is what I would imagine. Like as a kid, your imagination as a kid going wild creates these scenarios. What if I found an alien? What if my bike could fly? You know what I mean? These sort of profound little kid bucket list things. And it's got the dynamic between the three kids, which I always loved because it was, older brother, middle child, and youngest one is a girl, which is the exact same combo we had, which put me in exactly the same spot that Henry Thomas was as the middle child.
You got to be Elliot.
Yeah, I got to be Elliot. The scene with the frogs, like there's so many great iconic moments in that movie that it feels, if we're looking at that early era of Spielberg, that looks quintessentially Spielberg. I've said quintessentially like 3 times in this episode already.
Well, it's hard because quintessentially Spielberg applies to a lot of these different films, and some of it's intangible. They're intangible things that they all have.
But there is a tangible, it is an intangible, but it's easy to point out, which is the sentimentality of it. And sometimes Spielberg movies are way overly sentimental, and sometimes they are the exact right amount of sentimental and suspenseful and funny and touching. And that, I think E.T. has a perfect recipe, like the alchemy that made E.T. That really is gold.
Yeah. E.T., by the way, it was developed out of a horror script called Night Skies.
Oh, yeah?
That Steven Spielberg had been working on. And then they changed it and made it a family film, which of course, probably one of the best decisions he could have made professionally.
Yeah.
Because it is a classic movie that 5-year-old Hal went to see and then came out. My mother asked me, what'd you think? And I went, it was okay. I was not super impressed with E.T. as a 5-year-old.
Wow. Well,
which is the age you should love it. Because all you should think is, what if an alien showed up?
Right.
And we became best friends.
But are you thinking that at 5, or is that more of what like 8-year-old Hal would think? I guess at 5, I don't know if I formulated everything enough in my brain that I wouldn't look at the screen and go, who's that little weird old man?
No, I knew what I was watching.
All right.
And I also remember at the beginning, he's got his Star Wars figures. And I was like, I don't have Walrus Man. He has Walrus Man. And I wish I had Walrus Man.
Hal, you have never changed.
Correct. Still, I gotta be me.
All right. Do you have any more for the contenders list?
Yeah, multiple.
I only have one more, but I'll see what else you got on there.
I think I have 3 more.
On the mega contenders list?
Yes.
All right. What do you got?
One of them, actually 2 of them, are collaborations with the same actor.
Mark Rylance, Bridge of Spies, and the Big Freaking Giant.
Close. Tom, Big Freaking Giant. Hey, look at that big freaking giant.
Hey, that big freaking giant looks like Mark Rylance. I love you in Jerusalem. Speaking of Jerusalem, you've seen this sorry.
You've been to Yad Vashem. I want to go with one of his first collaboration with Tom Hanks, which is 1998 Saving Private Ryan. His recreation of the storming of the beach at Normandy was so precise and so intense that they provided counseling for veterans who went to see it. And the whole movie is good. I don't know that it's ultimately going to win, but I do think it is really good. And that sequence alone is just completely, it immerses you in that world so hard that it pulls you in for the rest of the film. And that's really impressive.
It's the greatest opening of any of his movies. Mm-hmm. It is. And it introduced, at least to me, and I think to the general population, that sort of super, super high frame rate where everything, even though it's going at speed, looks like it's crazy sped up and frenetic like that. Yeah. It's such an interesting, cool way of shooting a thing. It gives it that real visceral quality. And that's one of those Spielberg things that, it's he and Janusz just come up with some amazing visual ways to tell stories together and always have.
Yeah.
I don't know that movie, I think that movie after that sequence is very good.
Okay.
I don't think it's as great. I think the rest of the movie is very good. It's a great war movie. Yeah. Okay. A very good war movie.
Take it off the list. Can I give you the replacement?
No, I don't want to take it off the list. I'm just saying but that first 20 minutes might keep it up there at the top.
That's fair.
What else you got?
Is your other one Jurassic Park?
My other one's Jurassic Park. It was between Jurassic Park and one other one, which might be on yours. Oh. Which is Close Encounters.
I don't have Close Encounters. I do like Close Encounters a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know that it holds up as
Interesting.
Well.
Even though it sort of set the tone for that, like, here's what would reasonably happen if we made contact. Well, I guess that tone had been set before.
I think what we remember more than anything about that movie is that
is the music.
And that whole encounter sequence where the ship is communicating through music and the lights are going off.
Mm-hmm.
And the aliens come out and do the solfege. They do the hand because that's apparently is a universal. I mean, music being universal language is really smart. Yeah. But then the solfege, the actual hand.
That's also you guys. You didn't take solfege in school.
It's my favorite band. It's always felt a little far fetched. that we would all know the hand signals for things. But I just don't think it holds up in the same way. I think it's very good.
Yeah.
But not.
That's why ultimately I moved it to my second tier list. But I think there may be one that, well, look, somebody from the second tier I think is going to pop up into the first tier. But it does feel like, what Close Encounters is doing for my age that I was when all of these movies came out. And again, that's, part of where we're going to come from with this. E.T. did it better.
Yeah.
E.T. did alien coming and finding common ground with humans at more my speed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's way better. There's more of an emotional tie to it. Mm-hmm. It's not like making the devil's peak out of mashed potatoes and saying, this means something.
This is important. Look, Weird Al couldn't have done it later on in UHF, though, if he hadn't have done it.
That's the best thing out of it. All right, I have one more.
Is it Jurassic Park?
It's The Terminal. Here, look, we don't talk enough about how he creates a whole economy out of returning those luggage carts. No, it is another Tom Hanks collaboration with Steven Spielberg, and it is, for my money, the best Leonardo DiCaprio performance I've ever seen in a film. It is Catch Me If You Can.
Catch Me If You Can is great.
It is so good. It's a really fun kind of period piece. It's a really good dissection of Frank Abagnale Jr. as a con man. All the performances are really good. I love the way it's shot. I love the music, and it really brings you along. You go along for the ride. He brings you along for the ride, and it's exciting, and you get emotionally invested. And I think prior to that, my issue with Leonardo DiCaprio from watching was that I felt like everything, he was always at his best when he was doing extremes, but it was hard to get past, like, he's Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
He's Leo. And this movie, I think, subverted that so well and actually used it like a judo master. They use that momentum to sort of flip it around on you. And it's
how can you not love Leonardo DiCaprio and how charming he is?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that movie. He did a good run he's got a few of really fascinating middle of the 20th century true stories.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You've got this, you've got Bridge of Spies, you've got Munich.
Yes.
That are just, here is a moment in time, a little snapshot around what's going on in the world, but these factual stories. Did you see this article that came out in May, though, about Catch Me If You Can?
No.
It's all BS.
Oh, the whole
story. Yeah, the whole story is fake.
Isn't that great? That's the ultimate con of Frank Abagnale Jr.
That Frank Abagnale
built a whole career off of it.
Yeah, he's built a career off of this one amazing con that he pulled, and turns out this string of amazing cons that he pulled, and then turns out the biggest con that he's pulling all of it is not true.
It's fantastic.
But as a movie, it is so much fun. It veers so drastically from one emotion to another.
Mm-hmm.
And John Williams' soundtrack is just incredible for that movie. And we talked about this again in our John Williams episode, that it's got that sort of mid-century jazz groovy, but the fact that in the same movie and in the same character, in the same arc, you've got him walking onto a plane with all of the Pan Am flight attendants flanking him. So he goes
how
unnoticed.
Lucky can one guy get?
Yeah. So you got that scene, and you've also got these intensely emotional phone calls, and the final scene in the printing shop in the middle of the night at the end of it's a beautiful movie.
It's a little town where they never heard of Sara Lee. Here's the brilliant thing about John Williams' music. I know we're not talking about that,
but we can't talk about Spielberg and not talk about it.
Yeah, is the fact that the music relate the theme of the movie. So that Catch Me If You Can music, where it's really evasive, it's almost like the music is chasing itself. So you get the chase of Tom Hanks's FBI agent going after Frank Abagnale, and then him being cagey and sort of dodging around the same way. And I think you and Paget and I talked about this off show, that the music in Schindler's List is constantly trying to rise and fall.
Yeah.
So it's the struggle of the Jewish people during the Holocaust and in general. And it's hard for me to talk about it without crying, so I'm going to stop.
Yeah.
But I would say that Catch Me If You Can is my last finalist.
Okay. Well, let's talk then quickly about my last finalist, which is Jurassic Park.
Sure.
And that is I mean, it's not an original work. It was based on a book by Michael Crichton, which I don't know how many of these were based on previous properties.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jaws was.
Jaws was?
Jaws was based on Peter Benchley.
Okay, so there's been a few that have been based on other works. Jurassic Park, iconic music.
Yep.
It spawned not only countless sequels, but theme park rides, which multiple versions of the theme park ride. And it is another one of those. It feels like Spielberg was destined to direct this because it's another one of those as a little kid, like, what are you scratching off your little kid bucket list? Hey, what if scientists could make some dinosaurs now? Here's what would happen if we had dinosaurs today. Simplest of premises, but that was the first movie I ever saw and I think that this was him deftly using special effects because, the CG was not that huge, was not that realistic before 93. And this was the first movie I ever saw that the dinosaurs looked real and they looked terrifying.
Yes. Great mix of visual effects, graphic, computer generated effects, and live action, like puppets and models.
Yeah.
It really just so well done. The entire sequence of the T-Rex first approaching the Jeep.
Yeah.
Seeing the eye against the window. I mean, that holds up. And that is a over 30-year-old, well, nearly 30-year-old film.
Yeah. And the special effects did what they needed to do. They looked realistic. There's no point where it looks fake. So yeah, of course it holds up. It's just a Jeep and a dinosaur. It's pretty timeless, my friend.
Yeah. And it kicked off, obviously. There are not as many books as there are movies, but it created a franchise that continues to this day, has kept going.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again. And one of the other times he came back to direct a sequel was when he did The Lost World.
Which is not good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not so great.
No, it's the Jurassic Park Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Look, if his filmmaking was a batting average, he would be in Baseball Hall of Fame.
Oh, of course.
A very high batting average.
Yeah.
But let's step away from the batter's box of film right now.
Let's take a quick break.
We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we can briefly discuss some of the also-rans that we did not pick to be one of our 500 finalists. And then we will select among these movies the greatest Spielberg film of all time. We'll be right back. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. It doesn't matter who you are or what you have. Life can be stressful, especially the times that we're in right now. And when you are going through these issues, you do not have to go through them alone. You can get help from someone who's completely unbiased, someone who isn't going to judge you or take sides on anything, and you'll be surprised how much it can help. I'm talking about therapy, of course. And BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist. And it's more affordable than in-person therapy. See if it's for you, but as someone who's been in therapy for years, I cannot recommend it highly enough. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and We Got This listeners get 10% off their first month at BetterHelp.com/WeGotThis. Have your first session in under 48 hours at BetterHelp.com/WeGotThis.
I'm Lisa Hannawalt.
And I'm Emily Heller.
9 years ago, we started a podcast to try and learn something new every episode.
Things have gone a little off the rails since then. Tune in to hear about
low-stakes neighborhood drama,
gardening,
the sordid, nasty underbelly of the horse girl lifestyle,
hot sauce,
addiction to TV, and sweaty takes on celebrity culture,
and the weirdest, grossest stuff you can find on wikipedia.org.
We'll read all of it, no matter how gross. There's something for everyone on our podcast, Baby Geniuses.
Hosted by us, two horny adult idiots.
Hang out with us as we try and fail to retain any knowledge at all.
Every other week on Maximum Fun.
A man goes to the doctor and says that he's depressed and that life seems cruel. The doctor says, the treatment is simple. The great clown Pagliacci is in town tonight. Go and see him and you will surely feel better. The man bursts into tears and says, "But doctor, I am Pagliacci." Okay, says the doctor. In which case, try listening to the Beef and Dairy Network podcast. The Beef and Dairy Network podcast is a multi-award-winning comedy podcast, and you can find it at MaximumFun.org or wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, Hal, what's on your guilty pleasures of Spielberg list?
This isn't guilty pleasures. It is a really, really good movie with great performances. That was his first, to me, like super serious movie, which is The Color Purple.
Yeah.
The reason why, first of all, Oprah Winfrey's performance in that movie is so good.
Yeah.
So good. Brings tears to my eyes every time when she comes home. Danny Glover is great in it. Whoopi Goldberg is great in it. I think the issue that I have is, and it's great that he used his clout to get it made, but I really wish we could have seen a black director take that movie on.
Specifically a black woman directing that.
Yes.
It seems like an odd choice for, I mean, but in the mid 80s.
It is a great movie, but it's just, it doesn't feel like, it is not a Spielberg movie. It's not his movie. It would be weird to call it his movie.
Yeah. I'm putting Hook on there. That's for me the guilty pleasure. I love Hook. I've seen it a million times. Yeah. I think Dustin Hoffman is the best version of Captain Hook that I've ever seen. I think Bob Hoskins is the best Smee. I think Robin Williams is the best Peter Pan. And they gave us Rufio, for God's sake. That movie is amazing. I defy anyone that says that movie is terrible.
I loved, and a young Gwyneth Paltrow. And it's so clearly a set.
That's what I love. That movie is unapologetically a soundstage that they have made to look like Neverland.
It is really joyful. It's a really fun movie.
Yeah.
I loved it in the theater. I've watched it countless times. It would be weird for me to be like, no, I'm not going to front.
It's not the best.
Act cool. But it's great. I love it. I definitely have an attachment to it, but we recognize it's not the best.
Sure.
I really surprisingly liked Minority Report.
You know what? That was my next one on my list.
Oh, really?
Was I loved Minority Report.
It's really enjoyable. It's fun to make fun of. I make fun of the 3 bald children in the tub.
Yeah.
That's one of my go-to references. And him touching the screen, like working with those touch screens, and swiping stuff aside. That was like a bit at the time.
But that became Tony Stark.
Yeah.
That was the coolest thing about that movie.
I think it's too dark, ultimately.
Yeah.
Is the biggest issue with that. But it's better than I think people remember it being.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to move to one then that I think is Spielberg at his best storytelling when given something incredibly dry to tell a story about, which is Lincoln. And he's got to make passing amendments to the Constitution interesting, which he does. I think he's the only person who could give that really great story arc to legislation. And it's also the first time that anybody won an Oscar for a performance in one of his movies.
You know that feeling when you're in an older home and you're sitting in the living room and maybe there's like a fire going, nobody's talking. You hear the clock and just the house, of things settling, and there's a comfort to that.
Yeah.
That's Lincoln for me.
Yeah.
It is super slow, but his performance as Lincoln, you get what was so charismatic about him. And that's really interesting to see, here's Lincoln the person.
Yeah.
And what it might have been like to be around him and why he is so revered, not only for things that happened during his presidency, but sort of for this larger than life figure that he was. So I agree with that. Another great, I have 2 more. Do you have 2 more?
Okay. I got one more in me.
Okay.
Yeah.
One is The Post, which is not his best movie, but it has Meryl Streep in it, and she is fantastic, and also Tom Hanks. That's great cast. I love those sort of, here's what was going on in the 70s. Anything around Watergate and the reporting of it.
Just people on coyly corded phones walking around offices.
And smoking indoors. And
closing the blinds on their interior office.
Yeah. That has metal frames.
Yeah, exactly.
And one of those push-pull doors that you normally have outside.
Get in here. Close blind, close blind, close blind.
Everything's either mid-century or brutalist. Welcome. Yeah. This is The Post.
The Post is a blast. I love that vibe too. The phone call, the Meryl Streep phone call, and that is great. Everything is, it's fun. It's an all-star cast having a good time doing one of them, newspaper pictures.
Yeah.
I'm going to say my last one is, though we have already determined, and so I know it's not going to win because we already determined that even amongst its peers within its trilogy, it does not defeat Raiders of the Lost Ark, but I think Last Crusade is a pretty perfect movie.
I agree with you. I have one more. My last one, I don't know that it's maligned, but I think it's actually a little underappreciated.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes from maybe backlash to the anticipation of it coming out. And that's Ready Player One. I know it doesn't have everything that the novel has in it.
Yeah.
But it is a very Spielberg, like it's fun. It's digestible. You know, if I can take Jennifer to see it, who doesn't know the book, and she can enjoy it, it's like it's a good middle of the pack Spielberg movie. It's not his worst and far from his best, but it recaptures some of that fun that I think kind of went missing from a large number of his films, including Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, that didn't have like that fun spirit. It didn't feel the same. This felt a lot more like the fun Spielberg that we saw at points in the 80s.
Well, there's one way to really find the fun again, I think, and that is if you are known for making fun movies and then someone writes a novel that is just a love letter to your fun movies, and then you get picked to make the movie about how fun your movies are.
Yeah.
It's Spielberg directing a movie that is an homage to Spielberg.
Yep.
Which is, the fact that he directed that is bonkers to me.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great.
Yeah. Really, really good stuff.
Yeah. And it was super fun. And, you know, I loved the ending. And did you read the book?
No, I've not.
Yeah, me neither. I didn't need to read the book. There's a movie.
I saw the movie.
Like Harry Potter.
Nobody's going to ask me to write. Look, I'm in my 40s. Nobody's going to ask me to write a book report anymore. I enjoy reading. I don't want to say I don't enjoy reading, but I've not read that.
This just in. Hal Lublin hates reading.
Reading is bad to mental.
How's that illiteracy campaign that you've been running going?
Well, it's tough because we can't make any flyers to send out, but I don't know. I'm just hoping that people learn about it.
That's fair. Oh my God. All right. It sounds like we have our list of contenders. And if I may,
yes,
I'm going to go ahead and take a guess that we can narrow this down to 2 movies right now.
Really?
I think we can.
What's the list? How many movies are there? 8? Is that right?
We've cut them down a little bit. I'm going to tell you the 2 movies I think it is.
Wait, tell me all the finalists, and then let's see if I can guess what you think the 2 finalists are.
Okay. We only have 6 finalists.
Oh, only 6? Okay, yeah. That's good.
E.T., Schindler's List, Jaws, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Jurassic Park, and Saving Private Ryan.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think it's a 2-horse race.
I do too.
I think it's between Raiders of the Lost Ark and Schindler's List.
I was going to say Jaws and Schindler's List.
Interesting. Why Jaws over Raiders?
Because of its importance in...
Because we wouldn't have a Star Wars without it?
Because it gave us Star Wars.
That wasn't Darth Vader. That was Hal's inhaler.
Just the brilliance of not having to show the monster.
Yeah.
And his improvising on that set. By the time he made Raiders of the Lost Ark, he could use money to solve problems. Not that he did. I don't think he cut corners. But there's something to the almost pioneering spirit of Jaws that would give it an edge for me. And this is really it gave birth to a genre rather than, I think Raiders of the Lost Ark helped revive a genre.
That's fair. I think historical importance of Jaws is probably higher. For me, I just like Raiders of the Lost Ark better. I like that it is a classic movie. Like, it's when I think of the movies, that's what I'm thinking of. It's exotic locales and a hero who is smart and a heroine who is tough. Mm-hmm. And I think everything in that movie works.
It does.
I think that movie is pretty darn close to perfect.
It is. I think all 3 of these movies are perfect.
Yeah. That said, I do think that Schindler's List almost transcends the movies.
Yeah.
And what it's doing.
It's kind of tough to pick anything else.
Yeah.
It's tough to pick anything else. It's not the most, because the thing here, and they're all fine movies, is we're not picking the most Steven Spielberg movie.
Yeah.
We're picking what is the best movie he made.
And I think it is the best movie.
It is the best movie he's ever made. It's the only one that's required watching. That was assigned. Again, you want to talk about cultural importance. It acts as a fictionalized documentation of historical events. Mm-hmm. So it is a way for us to remember. And as we get farther and farther away, we're talking about now World War II ending almost 80 years ago. So as we get further away and the generations that lived it are no longer with us. I had relatives who were in concentration camps. I had relatives who I never would have had the chance to meet because they were lost during the Holocaust. But now that generation is disappearing and they've been preserved thanks to the work that Spielberg has done, just these hundreds of hours of interview footage he's gotten to capture these stories and keep them. And having them in a museum is great.
Yeah.
and being able to hear the words from the actual people who lived it. It's super important. But realistically, that's not always the most effective way to communicate with everybody.
Yeah. Get to their hearts.
Doing it through a movie to remind people not only of this story of incredible bravery and selflessness by a guy who had been very selfish up until then, and the resilience of the Jewish people during one of the most horrific periods in our history, is a way that people can watch it. And you're seeing it play out as a movie. You're seeing people that you recognize, but you're learning these things through these movies. And hopefully when you see it, it makes you want to learn more.
Yeah.
And you thankfully have a lot of material that you can access at any time, thanks to Steven Spielberg, the person, and as a filmmaker and a documentarian. So for that reason,
bring it on home.
People of the World, the greatest Steven Spielberg movie of all time, in maybe the greatest filmmaking resume outside of Hitchcock.
Yeah.
Maybe even rivaling Hitchcock, just for the pure variety of films.
Save it for the next ring. Save it for the ring next time.
All right. You got it. The best Spielberg movie is 1993's Schindler's List. Asked and answered. If you have not seen it, take the time to watch it. It's not easy, but it's important, and you'll be glad you did when it's over. Because the only way we correct the mistakes of the past is to learn from them and understand how they happened, why they happened, and why they can never happen again. Asked and answered.
Amen. This topic is closed, but there are many more topics to discuss. So please reach out to us on Twitter at We Got This Tweets, or
you can email us at wegotThisPodcast@gmail.com, or go to our Facebook group. Share the Spielberg movies you love and the moments that are forever etched into your brain over at Facebook.com.
It was the hug.
Rufio. Facebook.com/groups/We Got This Podcast. Thank you to producer Ken Plume, researcher Kate McManus, graphic designer Uri Kelman, and QA engineer Jen Alba.
And thanks, of course, to our musicians, Jonathan Dinerstein and Mike Furman, for our score and theme song, respectively. And thanks to you, the people of the world, for giving Hal and I an opportunity to look back on some of the movies that made us who we are. And I hope that you are having as good a time with this throwback to some classic Spielberg as we did. It was fun to focus on this week. And it's always a delight to talk with Hal about things that we find joyful and important. Yeah. So thank you. For Hal Lublin, I'm Mark Gagliardi.
For Mark Gagliardi, I'm Hal Lublin. And don't worry, everybody.
We got this.
We got this.
I don't know why I always feel compelled to do that ending directly into the lens, even though nobody's actually going to watch.
Sometimes I'm looking at you just to see
you go like,
at the same time.
People of the world. It's like, it's just each other that know that are seeing this. Yeah.
We're making eye contact with the audience, of course. Why wouldn't we?
Get it.
Sloppy steaks.
MaximumFun.org.
Comedy and culture.
Artist owned.
Audience supported.